Hi, so we're here for another week, and this week is all about balloons. So, even though this week is about balloons, I'm still talking about other types of buoyant things that will float and rise up in the sky. So, we're talking about parachutes, and the reason why I decided to focus on parachutes today is because the group of brothers that discovered, or is recognized at least for discovering, the air balloon, which is one of the first balloons, they also developed one of the first parachutes. So they're very closely related, even though today they might not be thought so much to be the same. So let's start with a trivia quiz, or just a quiz in general, about balloons. Oh, this is great. This quiz is about hypothetical, or perhaps prophetic, flights by balloons of different kinds. In 1782, the Mongols began experimenting with small balloons filled with hot air. What did they initially believe made the balloons rise? Air currents? Ooh. Because what it is the heated air. Oh, at least that's what they say now. Because it's warmer than what's around it. Air currents? The first people to travel in a free-flying gas balloon were Professor Jacques Alexander Charles and Mary Noel Robert. False. Professor Challenger tried to construct a gas balloon in the book The Lost World. What was the balloon's envelope made from? Terrapons. I think it's cloth. In 1785, John Pierre Blanchard and John Jeffreys were the first to cross which body of water by balloon? I think it's the Irish Sea. Book The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, Dorothy and the wizard planned to escape from Oz by hot air balloon with only the wizard on board. What prevented Dorothy from joining him? Toto ran off, the Tin Man lost heart, the lion was afraid, the scarecrow fell. I actually don't. I think they talk about the Tin Man a lot, so I think it's about the Tin Man. Which part of the world did Phileas Fogg and his companions cross by balloon in the book Around the World in 80 Days? Phileas Fogg. I think it's the Alps. I really don't know. The first balloon to fly nonstop across the Atlantic landed in a field southwest of Dublin in Ireland. Oh my gosh. It's probably true. Who were the first to fly nonstop around the world by balloon? That's a good question. I like that question. Pierre Lindstrand and Richard Branson, Bertrand Piccard and Brian Jones, Steve Fawcett, Larry Newman. I don't know. I'm going to go for Brian Jones. 2 people were lifted to the height of 18,325 feet by 14,000 party balloons in 2001. What were the balloons filled with? Helium. Oh. Party balloons are filled with helium. Which fictional character composed and sang a song while floating below a balloon? Oh. Definitely Winnie the Pooh. I saw Winnie the Pooh doing this recently in some pictures. Okay. False. It was true. They were the first to travel. Oh, to travel. A fish lizard's stomach. The Lost World by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. A number of people became trapped in an isolated plateau overlooking the Brazilian plains. Also trapped on the plateau were early human cave dwellers, ape people, and different kinds of dinosaurs. The book was first published in 1912 and has been adapted, often very freely, into several films, with the first one directed by Harry O. Hoyt and starring Wallace Beery, being released in 1925. A 3-season television series inspired by the book was originally shown in the U.S. between 1999 and 2002 and began with the travelers becoming trapped on a plateau with their hot air balloon crash. The English Channel. Toto ran off. The owl. They did not travel by balloon. Before a successful flight in 1978, 13 sets of balloonists were recorded as having attempted the journey. Most were forced to land in sea. Although the first attempt was made in 1873, the second one only took place in 1958 when the balloon's small world took off from Tenerife and traveled nearly halfway across the Atlantic before a storm forced it down. Yeah. Who was the first to fly nonstop? Okay. Helium. I was pretty confident about that one and this one. Hey, it's not so bad. It's not so bad. I learned quite a bit. I love the explanations here. So let's go into the book and then we'll make a quiz. Today for the quiz, I think I'm going to use Google Quizzes instead of using Kahoot until I figure that out or decide I want to use it. I do love Kahoot, but I'm not going to spend time doing the same thing that I did last week. So let's go ahead and open the book. Borrow. Again, hot air balloons. And the reason why I'm focusing on them is because they're honestly probably not some of the first balloons, but I'm surprised the other topic that I have for the trivia question tomorrow didn't come up at all in the quiz. And that's that balloons are made of a natural sort of a latex material from trees, and they still are today. So there are a lot of trees in the Amazon forest that are still crucial in the production of balloons. And so I'm just hoping that something comes up about that here in their relation to hot air balloons. Maybe not. So let's just search latex. No. I'll take a note to try to have a lot of events in the Amazon because I'm not talking a whole lot about that right now. But hopefully I can make a note on it, a note about it in the takeaways about the latex balloons. Great. Right. So when you make a quiz, a lot of times you just make a form first, but there is another way to make a quiz. If you go through Google Classroom, and I might start doing that for next year, where there's just a Google Classroom that everyone can come into, take the quiz, participate in the quiz, because there's the option. I think there's the option for others to edit it. There's something about, okay, so there's quiz question. Now let me see about, at a school. At a school. I'm not at a school. This class name is just practice for 2026. Section, page data. Subject varies. Check calendar on Instagram. And then room values. Honestly, I wouldn't have expected it. This is bringing back really good memories. Wow. Yeah. Announce something to the class. I must need to make this bigger to see where I can add something. I don't remember. Classwork. Great. There we go. And then we can make a quiz assignment. Okay. So you can do an assignment, which is great. I love Google Classroom. I actually kind of forgot about how great it is. It's also lovely like Kahoot. I think it's great to use a mix of everything. So you can make an assignment, which a lot of times is when you'll add an attachment with a description of what to do with it. You can add links. Assignments pretty much are just really open. A quiz assignment is like an assignment, but it helps you to set it up like a quiz with questions like a form. A question is just one question, so they don't have to click on it. They see the question, they click on it for other elaborations. Material is kind of like assignment, but it's just the link. and then you can reuse a post by reposting maybe an assignment, a quiz assignment, a question or material that you posted before that's relevant for what needs to be done currently or presently. And then there's a topic. So a topic is how you can go about organizing all of these things more like a course. So this is very much a learning management system, but it's not as large as others in that it doesn't have as much crossover to different things like modules with other departments, I think. But within a student's account, it works kind of like a backpack where they can go in, they come in, and they see all their classes, and they can click into the different class. But there isn't so much collaboration across different teachers' platforms. And I like that because then there isn't the pressure to do it. And then you just kind of have a little bit more flexibility about how and when collaboration shows up in your classrooms to make sure that you're genuinely doing it in the best way that benefits students. I know that modules and things like that don't necessarily connect across departments and other learning management systems, but that's pretty much just a limitation that a lot of LMSs have. So yeah, I miss this a lot. I miss this. I had a really good class. It was called a grade 9 focus class where students who were new to high school were given some background and support for making the most out of their high school years, or at least that's how I thought about it. And the grading it's not something that I ever tried. That's not true. I did, but I didn't get really into the grading like some other teachers did. I think early on, Google Classroom has been around for quite a while now, but when it was first being used during COVID and things like that, I think it dealt with some overload and some grades ended up being corrupted. So I didn't really use grades. When I use Google Classroom and when I use Google Suite to teach, I did the grading with Google Classroom. This is how I did it. Actually. I think I'm confusing the earlier days with the later days of using Google Classroom. I think once I figured it out, I was really impressed. I was like, wow. And it took me a while to get used to it. But essentially, you come in for grades and you'll see all of the assignments that students have. You'll be able to click on them and grade them. And I don't know if you can annotate them. I'm trying to remember. That's the thing. I went in and annotated a good amount of the time. I don't remember if that was through this portal or if I went into their actual assignments and did it. I think I went into their actual assignments through this portal, annotated, gave a grade, and left like a little note. I had like, yeah, those were good days. They were good days. They really were. So here we have our place to make a quiz. And I'll try to do 5 questions. I guess balloons are a little bit more comfortable for me. And I'm guessing the questions are going to be easier to make with this book than last week's. So we'll make a quiz assignment. So I think the way that things are labeled here is very good. It's very clear. It can feel redundant, but it's correct. It's true, it's accurate. So it's a quiz assignment. So basically, instead of having to go through, make a quiz, and attach the form, what's done is you click on it and it's already set up with a form there for the sake of a quiz. So we can say balloons. What is today? Today is October 8th. Okay. Enjoy. And then over here, you have who do you assign it to, which is lovely, especially if you work with small groups. I don't usually work with preset small groups. That was one thing that I kind of did, but might not have managed as well as other teachers, or not as often anyway. I would do small groups often, but I didn't make the groups. I just had students work in groups. And sometimes they would work with where they were seated, because I would make those, like somewhat database, because you'd have to do that. And then outside of that, I let students move around. And honestly, very rarely did I say, okay, today, here's who your group members are, just because I didn't really get to a point where that was a comfortable process for me. I tried to, though. I made, the whole popsicle sticks with names, and I thought I could just do it randomly. And then if there's a day where I think, man, these students really need to be in specific groups, then I would do that. If I would do it again, I know just like a lot of teachers do this, I would probably have students make little magnets when they first come to school or come to class. I would give them, like I showed this earlier, this like a little laminated piece of paper. But what would happen is they would get the piece of paper laminated, and then they would add a little magnet to the back of it so that I could move them into different groups, and I could keep the materials for that available so they could update their, whatchamacallit, you know what I mean? If you finish early, make a special Christmas one or something like that, I don't know. But I just use popsicle sticks because working with language students and having, for the most part, relatively large classes. I mean, people are dealing with huge classes. So that's another thing about Google Classroom when you're working remote as a teacher. The classroom limit is just not a thing. So I think I had one class that almost had 40 students. And I know that this happens in person, especially now, but not as much, I guess, because rosters are really low. But grading all 40 of them, I will say Google Classroom helped quite a bit. And just being confident that I would have access to all of them, and I would confidently know who submitted, who didn't. Because when I would use folders, students have their classwork, folders, physical folders. It worked really well too. I like that too. It's just having to take it home was a little bit of a burden. And then depending on the school culture, if you're that teacher that stays late grading, it's just kind of like, hey, get a life. But it's like, also, this is how I make sure I have a life when final grades are due, But anyway. Speaking of when things are due, so the points, how many points? The points situation was kind of funny for me. Even if you give a small amount of points, you can still grade based on percentage. So I just tried to generally weight different stuff. The due date can change. It doesn't really necessarily mean that it'll close the assignment. And then topic, again, organizing it where it needs to go, things like that. I didn't organize it by topic, but I might have. Oh, right. If you have different classes, then you can choose which class it's for. Yeah. It's really good. It's really, really great. I like it. Once you get started with it, like once you're comfortable with it, it can feel like it's really limited or limiting, but there's actually really no limitations to Google Classroom. It lets you do absolutely anything. It's set up with a lot of other programs and platforms to make it a little bit more convenient too. So it just provides a really good system and structure, like very consistent. But there's almost nothing that you can't do with Google Classroom, like videos, tutorials, depending on what you link to these different quizzes and assignments and materials. The favorite of mine, one time what I did was I wanted to practice making virtual spaces. So I made these like virtual classrooms because, it's kind of weird when you're in school, but you don't have a classroom to go to. But anyway, maybe one of these days I can make a virtual classroom or something like that. But all right, so Drive, YouTube, create, upload, and link, and jewel balloons up to 8. I think at this point we're just looking to, oh no, so if you create, then that's when you're making like slides or something else. So let's just go ahead and make the blank quiz. I don't remember how to do this. Schedule, assign, save draft, discard draft. I guess we're just assigning. What do I do if I click? Yeah. Vids, yay, right? Vids, yay. So drawings are great. Everything. I just remembered something. I miss making stuff with Google. So let's go ahead and use the one that was provided for us. Assign. So this isn't what we want. I know. The one thing I didn't love about Google Classroom at the time was that sometimes students would complete the assignment but not hit the submit button. I didn't have the heart to tell kids that if they didn't hit the submit button, they wouldn't get the grades. So if I was sitting there grading everything, I would start with the ones that were submitted, and then I would go and look at the ones that weren't. And if it was completed, I would send the student a message to submit so that I could give it a grade. I don't think that happened repeatedly. It's not as though it was a big issue, but that was one challenge that I came across. But the great thing is Google has the different versions. So I'm pretty sure with this one student, I'd said, hey, I went through and your assignment wasn't complete. And they were pretty upset. Like, no, I did the assignment. So I went back and I checked the versions and he had completed it by the due date. He just didn't hit submit. So I had to apologize. Sorry about that. Can you make sure you hit submit next time, please? All right, so balloons. Ooh. Oh, question. Yeah, I didn't make quizzes with forms. I made exit tickets with forms. I mean, pretty much the same thing, but not all at the same time. So I've used forms for repeated exit tickets, right? Which means they have to answer the same type of question at the end of every lesson, but it's going to be different because we're discussing a different topic. So I was really trying to get students to be aware of their learning goals in their other classes to be able to self-assess. So when I was doing grade 9 focus, the exit ticket was always the same. The exit ticket was always, what was the objective? Describe the objective in your own words. And then, did you achieve the objective? And how do you know? And some students would, and I told them it's not about whether or not you met the objective, it's about whether or not you're aware if you met the objective or not. And then at a certain point, it becomes, hey, why do you never meet the objective? But it was just about self-awareness and also creating a sense of autonomy with their learning. Because if it got to the point where they would be in some classes, the question would be, well, what are we doing today? I particularly don't like that question because in some cases you won't have the objective, or it's just not ideal to give the objective for some lessons because it defeats the purpose. But it all depends on how you word it. So I really, really liked that. At the end of every lesson, they always knew what the question was. They always knew what the expectation was. And I think that helped with students submitting it. And also it was for a grade. So essentially you just have to submit most of the exit tickets, most of the, bell work, bell work. Man, just talking so much. I'm almost done. But the bell work was varied, but not so much. I'd usually have them do some kind of engaging thing that they could do as many times as they wanted to or needed to. Or I would say, hey, do this until you get at least a 75% or something like that. Or how much time does it take you to match everything? And I would have students post their time, right? I mean, I had like some components of being competitive, but it didn't matter. As long as they submitted it, that's what mattered most. But some students like that competitive aspect, but it isn't the basis for their grade. I don't know if I made it optional for them to say how long. I don't remember. All I know is that it was Quizlet. And a lot of times they would practice vocabulary. Sometimes at the time when Jamboard was available, I made Jamboards. Jamboards are really good for having them go in and annotate together and kind of respond to each other. I really like that. You can do something similar with Google Slides now as well. One thing that's really good is if they have an assignment, the way to make up for not being physically in a classroom is to say, hey, you guys just finished your projects. They were digitally submitted via Google Slides, here's the slide with all of your submissions, leave a comment on somebody's work, and that was good. So yeah, I really love Google Classroom, but you just got to understand that it's still all about how you put things together and how you make materials work for the class. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I like Google Classroom. That's where I started using Wheel of Names. So here we go. We're going to try to do 5 questions. We're going to try to finish this in like 10 minutes and then do a little quick itinerary before we go. Oh yeah, the idea is that I'm only going to save the quiz screen. One moment. What? It's saying here that the chicken joke came from the air balloon situation. Here's the thing. I'm using these books just to study, and I'm getting that this is ringing like it's true. What? This says they flew about 5 miles across the French countryside. I would say that's travel, right? We just did our question, and this is no hard feelings at all. It's just, making assessments is an integral part of, teaching, learning, whether you're doing it yourself or with others. So they flew about 5 miles across the French countryside. That's a good one. About how many miles? Oops. A few months later, hold on. It's just a point. Hold on. This should let me select it as being the correct answer. Why is it not letting me do? Oh yeah. There we go. Okay, cool. Nice. And it's fun. It's great. It's really nice to make quizzes. It's cool to let other students make quizzes, to quiz each other. And you could think that's not helpful, but the thing is, sometimes you can scaffold it by getting the facts that they need to make into questions. Yeah. And with time, they'll have more fun with it, and they'll like pick apart the different details and like rearrange the questions and stuff like that. Okay. So we need another question. Add question. Nope, not balloon. Balloon. All right, so the next question. Let's keep reading. It was early. Hold on. It was nearly 120 years later that the Wright brothers made their first controlled flight in an airplane in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Two brothers made aviation history again. Since the first balloon lifted away from the Earth, we have learned a great deal about flying. Since the first balloon lifted away from the Earth, we have learned a great deal about flying. The Montgolfier brothers were wrong to think that it was the smoke that caused the balloon to fly. It was really the hot air inside the cloth bag that made it rise into the sky. You can check the fact that hot air rises. Measure the temperature of the air near the floor. Is it the smoke? Is it smoke? Is it the smoke or the heat from a fire that makes an air balloon rise? So we'll do smoke just because we'll go in the order that they were put in the question. Heat, neither. Oh, I like that question. All right, here we go. This one, 1 point, and heat. Cool. So I have another question. Almost ready for the next question. Modern hot air balloons use a large burner fueled by propane gas to heat the air in the bag. In modern balloons, there is no smoke at all, and the balloon can remain in the sky for 1 or 2 hours with 30 gallons of fuel stored in 10-gallon tanks. The flame of the burner shoots into a large opening at the bottom of the balloons. The bag, which is also called an envelope, is made of modern ripstop nylon or polyester. It is a very strong fabric. It is also used for parachutes and hang gliders. You may own a sleeping bag or a small tent made of ripstop nylon or polyester. Ooh. Which strong materials, or nylon, is it ripstop? Okay. Which two strong fabrics are also are used to produce hot air balloons and hot air balloons, parachutes, and tents. So I'm going to say, I don't want to put that answer because, hold on. It's a fabric. It's a fabric. I could say cashmere. And then we could say polyester and ripstop nylon. Answer key 1. I can choose more than one, right? Yes. All right, that's 3 questions. We just need 2 more. Hot air balloons often fly very early in the morning. There are 2 reasons for this. The air is usually very still at this time of day. This makes it easier to fly balloons since they are easily blown around by the wind. And the morning air is usually cool. Remember, hot air rises. If the air around the balloon full of hot air cools, the balloon rises more easily. Hold on. Is air officially... Well, it's not a count noun, but hold on. What is it called if it's not a count noun? A non-count noun. Right. Mass noun. Okay, that's fine. The cooler the air is, the more lift the balloon will produce. Lift means the ability of the balloon to carry weight from the ground into the sky. A balloon that can lift 4 people in the winter might be able to lift only 2 in the summer, when the air around the balloon is warmer. The air around the balloon is called ambient air. Ooh. One more question. One more minute. Crew arrives at the launching site in the morning before sunrise. It takes 2 to 4 strong people to lift the balloon and basket from the truck to the ground. A few of the balloonists' trucks even have power tailgates to help unload and reload the balloon. The crew has to unfold the huge balloon on the ground. Then it is fastened to the basket with stainless steel wires. The entire balloon is set up on its side first. Then a fan with a gasoline engine is started. It blows cold air into the balloon to begin the fill-up. The cold air does not rise, so the balloon stays on its side on the ground. Oops. When it is filled, the pilot lights the large propane burner and points the flame into the envelope opening. As the air inside the bag starts to get warmer, the envelope rises. Gradually, the basket tips, and the pilot and passengers get into it. Other crew members help hold the basket steady. They do not want the balloon to take off yet. All right. The pilot uses a checklist to make sure everything is working properly. He has to give a blast of flame from the burner from time to time to keep the balloon standing at attention. He cannot get it too warm, though, or it will take off before he wants it to. In some balloons, the pilot and his fellow flyers all must wear helmets for safety. Ballooning is a very safe sport, but landings can be bumpy at times. All sports call for safety steps to help us enjoy them. Hands off, the pilot shouts the command, the crew members. All right. Wait, what the heck? All right. I think that's fine. Cool. So there's the quiz. It's balloons. It's 8:02, so let's go ahead and do our itinerary. I think it's good. That was interesting. So we'd mentioned, I go ahead and share my entire screen really quickly. harvesting rubber for balloons in the Amazon. Museo de Serengal Villa, Paraíso. Spain and France, it seems like. All right, so that's the end of it today. Looks like we're going to France or Spain for a hot air balloon ride. Read the book. It's not that long. It's not that long of a book, but you get a really good description of the history. Enjoy it as you're flying, and then just, I don't know, find a way to share your experience or find a way to share or just share a little bit of how you enjoy what you're participating in. So until next reach out, keep it love.